Hari Om. Let's start with a prayer. Om Samasta Jana Kalyani Niratam Karunamayam Namami Chinmayam Devam Sadgurum Brahma Vidbaram Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsachanura Mardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum Tvameva Mata Cha Pita Tvameva Tvameva Bandhusya Sakha Tvameva Tvameva Vidya Dravidam Tvameva Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Tvameva Sarvam Gurudeva Deva. Hari Om. We're looking at the Nataka Deepa Prakaranam. That is the 10th chapter of Panchadashi by Vidyaranya Swami. And in 26 slokas, he providing the essence of Advaita Vedanta. We are looking at the verse 22. Let's chant together. Antar Bahirva Sarvam Va Antar Bahirva Sarvam Va Yam Desam Parikalpayet Yam Desam Parikalpayet Buddhistadeshaga Sakshi Buddhistadeshaga Sakshi Tata Vastushu Yojanat Tata Vastushu Yojanat Antar Bahirva Sarvam Va Yam Desham Parikalpayet Buddhistadeshaga Sakshi Tata Vastushu Yojanat. So here the Antar and Bahir, inside and outside. So I am able to see objects outside, and outside is being done by the buddhi, that is the mind, and it travels according to Vedanta or according to Mimamsa. It travels along with the senses and grasps the object. Senses pick up the attributes of the object and forms in the mind a vritti, a thought. So we call it bahirvritti, because the vritti means a thought, is related to the objects outside. Objects outside remain outside, but mind grasps the object, but the object still remains outside. So what it grasps is only through the senses, the attributes of the object. But even those attributes the senses cannot grasp. What they can grasp is only the response or reflective attributes of the object as measured by the sense capability. For example, if there is an object, and if I have only 20/20 vision, I can see the object clearly. But if my vision itself is defective, then even though object is as it is, I may not see the object as it is because of the defective nature of my eyesight. Same way, the hearing capacity or tasting capacity or touching capacity, the sensitivity of the sense objects depends on so many other factors and doesn't depend upon the object per se. So therefore, the vrittis that are formed in the mind depends upon the objects that I am perceiving. If it is a sense of sight, a form vritti is formed. So it's called a nama and a rupa. So nama rupatmakam jagat. The whole universe is nothing but names and forms, because the mind cannot grasp the substantive of the object, whether it's a real substance or from the Vedanta point it is Brahman itself. Because the real substance may be, for example, if it's a golden ring or a bangle or golden or the iron ring, I will not grasp the object per se, but I will grasp the attributes of gold, attributes of the ring, attributes of copper, and deduce that the material is made up of either gold or an iron or a copper. So it's only attributive knowledge. and attributes form a vritti, and that's called vritti vyapti. And buddhi along with the vritti vyapti, so essentially the object out there as though, quote unquote, transform as a thought in my mind, and the thought content is related to the attributes of the object. And now I am a subject. I had to illumine that thought, because thought by itself is inert. So by illumination of the object, I'll be able to gather that by the reflection of the consciousness, because I am a subject, the consciousness, the light of consciousness illumines, and the light of consciousness get reflected, and the reflection of the consciousness is called phalavyapti. That means now I understand, or now I am conscious of the attributive content of the thought, which is same as attributive content of the object. From the attributive content, I should figure it out by the intellect that there is an object out there with these attributes. So, and also it has to go back to my memory. If I have seen that object before and I know the name of the object or the knowledge of the object, and I can say this object is from my cognition to recognition of the object. So recognition comes from the memory. Cognition is direct immediately. The volition, perception, volition occurs, and cognition occurs in the mind, but the mind has to go back to memory. If there is a record of that information, hey, this is a cow or this is a chair, that automatically or spontaneously arises. That called, the object is this, that's called the nama. Nama means naming. Naming involves knowing. Knowing involves, that means a conscious entity has to come in, and therefore consciousness coming from, originally from Sakshi, via reflection of the mind, that Sakshi itself illumines the thought, and illumination of the thought is called the consciousness getting reflected. So antar bahihi, bahihi is external, the vritti's formation, and inside in the buddhi a formation of a vritti about the external object. External to what? External to my body. So external or internal is with reference to the body. So antaha bahihi sarvamba, everything, whether the antar vritti is nothing but when the object is illumined by my consciousness, then spontaneously another thought arises, another vritti arises, and it is of the nature of I am a knower of this. So knower thought, that's called aham vritti, spontaneously arises. It doesn't involve again the process of another vritti and then illumination of that vritti by another. So it becomes a infinite regress called anavastu dosha. So therefore it spontaneously rises, and I know this is a pot, I know this is a chair, I know this is the table, and that's called antarvritti, knower thought. Known thought is idam vritti, knower thought is aham vritti. So antar and bahir, antar, bahir, sarvam, everything. So every knowledge involves these two. I know this, I know this, I know this. This can be an object which can be grossified, like a chair, table and all that. Or it can be subtle concepts like someone teaching me chemistry. Yeah, I know that, I know that, I know that. So knowing chemistry is also another this, but that is a subtler object that I had to learn. But that's also an object for me to know. But I know this chemistry, I know physics, I know biology, so I am a knower is also a ownership antar that arises spontaneously. That's called ahankara vritti also. So antar bahirva So antarva, bahirva, either inside or outside thoughts. Sarvamba, everything, that means the whole world is nothing but this subject-object duality all the time. So in the waking state and the dream state. That's why Mandukya Upanishad says, Ekona Vimshati Mukhaha. Ekona Vimsha means 19 gateways I go out and interact with the world outside. So that is essentially 5 sense organs are involved, 5 karmendriyas, jnanendriyas, and this is the 10. Karmendriyas are 5, jnanendriyas are 5, and pancha pranas, that is 15, and then 4 involves the buddhi, ahankara, manas, buddhi, ahankara, and chitta, all 19 gateways in which I am interacting with the world. So antar bahir sarvamba yam desham parikalpayed, the whole space itself is being created in the space, time, as well as objects are all pervaded by my consciousness, because I am conscious of the space and time too. So desham, space, parikalpayed, they are imagined by the buddhi only. Now sakshi is not limited by either space or time. Desha kala vastu aparichinnatvam. So every object in the world is desha kala vastu parichinnam. That means limited by space-wise, time-wise, object-wise. But sakshi illumines antaraha bahi, inside, outside, everything, and it doesn't have inside, outside, because even in the deep sleep state, sakshi is there, even space is not there, time is not there. So therefore, I am beyond the space, and I am, when the space comes, I illumine the space also. So I pervade the space, and that's why I am called infinite in that sense. So sakshi, is it infinite? You can say infinite is only with respect to finite things. But there is neither finite, infinite in the sakshi. It is one where no words can reach. Na manaha, na vak. Say, yadgatvana nivartante aprapya manasasaha. Neither mind can go there or speech can go there. And that is the sakshi. Then how are we going to know about it? He's going to talk in the next few slokas. So antar bahirva sarvamba yam desham parikalpaye buddhi deshagaha. It itself moves around in the space, and it is itself limited by the space. And same is the objects also in the space, and I am beyond the space as well. So sakshi tada vastushu yojanat. So sakshi illumines everything inside, outside, space, time, everything, and it's beyond therefore time and space also. And this one is emphasized in the sloka 23. Yad rupadi kalpayed, yad rupadi kalpayed, bhujyatat prakashayan, bhujyatat prakashayan, tasya bhavet sakshi, tasya bhavet sakshi, swato vak bhujya gocharaha, swato vak bhujya gocharaha. So Yajyat rupadi kalpayet, whatever the rupam, the form, rupam includes sabda, sparsa, rupa, rasa, gandha, all 5 senses that senses can gather. If the senses cannot gather, all the 5 senses are not working, then there is no world that can be perceived by the buddhi also. So I may have a buddhi, but if my 5 senses are not functioning, then the world is not recognized. World may be there, but it's not recognized. Or it can be recognized distortively if my senses are not perfect also. So if I am a color blind, I see the world different from what it is. So all that is implied here. Yajyat rupa adi kalpana, all are called kalpana, is imaginations in the mind because of the vritti formation. Bhujyat tattat prakashet, and that will be illumined. So here, unless I see, the world cannot be established. So tattat prakashet. So for the existence of the world, for the knowledge of the existence of the world, I need to be conscious entity to illumine. So existence of the world is established by the knowledge of its existence. And without that, you cannot establish, world becomes an indeterminate. Bhujyat tattat prakashayam. Tasya tasya bhavet sakshi. So, as these thoughts rise, it illumines whatever the thoughts rise in the buddhi, it illumines whether it's a spatial coordinates, time-wise coordinates, object-wise differences, it illumines whatever that buddhi grasps. So as long as the buddhi is active, all things will be functioning through the five senses and the vritti formation and illumination by the sakshi, and the knowledge of that will be occurring all the time. Tasya sasya bhavet sakshi. So it is the sakshi, that is sakshi chaitanyam, that illumines, and therefore I am conscious of this object, that object, this object. If the sakshi is not there, then I will not be conscious of anything. Of course, sakshi is always there. It's only question of now, antakaranam is there or not. Because sakshi is always eternally present. Whether the mind is not there or mind is there or not, one has to know. And that is therefore, it's as long as the mind is functioning along with the senses, then the illumination of the world, subject-object duality will be raising in the mind. Swataha vak bhujya gocharaha. So by itself the sakshi cannot be known, buddhi agocharaha. So by itself buddhi cannot know the sakshi. So how do I know then? That's going to be addressed in the thing. Why buddhi cannot know? Because it's not an object. I am a subject. Subject is that. How do you define a subject? Subject is that which cannot be objectified. That's the definition of a subject. And subject and object. Object is desha kala vastu parichinnam. It is limited by space-wise, time-wise, object-wise. And this means this object is different from that object, is different from that object. And each object differs only because their attributes are different. That's how you define an object. So how do you define a water? We learn in the chemistry, water is colorless, odorless, tasteless. All that attributes of the water is being defined. If water is some tasty, then it's not, the taste is not due to water, it is something other than the water is there in the water. One has to know. So therefore, the buddhi cannot grasp the subject because it has to turn inwards, and in the turn inwards, it cannot know. So Swami Dayananda Swami Chimayanji used to give an example of, I use a flashlight to see everything. So in order for me to see the batteries inside the flashlight, I cannot use the flashlight, because if I try to open it, the flashlight doesn't work. So to see myself, who I am, I cannot use the outward, the extrovert mind cannot be used at all. So how do I know? That is answered in the next sloka. Katham tadrunmaya grahyam katham tadrunmaya grahya iti chedmaiva grahyatam iti chedmaiva grahyatam sarvagraha pasam samshante sarvagraha pasam samshante swayameva vasishyate swayameva vasishyate. Together. Katham tadrunmaya grahya iti chedmaiva grahyatam sarvagraha pasam samshante sarvagraha pasam samshante swayameva vasishyate swayameva vasishyate. So question is, katham, how? Tadrun maya, tadruk maya. So how am I going to know? How this Atma, Tadru means that which is Sakshi, how is he going to know? How am I going to know? By me, Maya. Katham, how do I know? Katham Grahyaha. How to know then? How to know Sakshi? How to know myself? Says in the 7th chapter, the Upanishad talks about, says Atma Vijaniyat. You have to know Atma. How do you know? Here is one answer here. Katham druk. So in what way I will be able, Maya Katham grahyam. How am I going to know? Iti ched, if you ask, Ma eva, by myself, grusyatam. So Ma eva grusyatam. Ma, you cannot know this Atma. So you are supposed to know, and he says immediately that you cannot know. So what do you mean you cannot know? Then how am I going to realize Atma? So essentially, Atma cannot be known as an object. If you think you know Atma, that means you do not know Atma. This is what this statement in the Kayanopanishad. If you think you know it, then you don't know it, because it's not an object for me to know. It is subject itself. Subject cannot be objectified. So therefore, iti ched maiva grahyatam. Therefore, you cannot know this. Then how do I know? Here it says sarva graha pashamshanto. So all, if I reject everything that I am knowing, because everything that is knowing is not me. So I am a knower and this is a known. So known cannot be knower. So first I have to reject all knowns as not me. So who am I? Inquiry. Essentially, who am I? Inquiry. I am rejecting whatever is out there as I know is not me. So sarva graha samshanto. So when I reject not this, not this, not this, so any this is not me, because this is an object, I am a subject. I cannot be an object. So any object cannot be me, subject. So I reject whole world is not me. That's very easy. And then how about the body? Body is also idam. Idam shariram kaunteya. This is a shariram is also idam. Anything that I can point out, anything that can be known, it comes under idam only. That's called kshetram. So the body is not me. So who am I? I am not the body. How about the mind? Mind also I know, because what mind is the thoughts, and all the thoughts that arise in the mind I know. So I am not the mind, I am not the buddhi, I am not the body, I am not the pranas. I can reject everything. Then how am I going to know? So here sarva graho samshanti. So one rejecting all sarvagraha, all objects that are known has to be rejected, says that it is essentially upasamsante. So one having rejected everything, swayameva avasishyate. I am alone left. I cannot reject also I am, because to reject I am, I have to be there to reject. So I cannot reject myself. So I can reject everything else but not myself. That's why even in the deep sleep state, I am not the waker, I am not the dreamer, I am not a deep sleeper, but I am that which pervades all the truth. And who am I? I am that Sakshi. That is how Mantra 7, the of Mandukya Upanishad, na anta pragyam, na bhai pragyam, no bhayata pragyam, na prajnanaga. I am not this, I am not this, I am not a waker, I am not a dreamer, I am not deep sleeper. And it is that which is cannot be seen, cannot be heard, cannot be all that. It is Advaitam Chaturtham Manyanti Sa Atma Savigneya. That can only be known by inquiring. Inquiry of what? In everyone it is there. One has to see in and through every knowledge also. Because its presence is there, but it cannot be known as an object. Upasamsante Swayameva avasishyate. When you reject everything, what is left is the myself. So what should I do? This is what who am I? Inquiry is what I am rejecting has to be understood also. So it's not the world. So I am not the object. But when I reject the world, what I am rejecting actually is not the world, because the substantive of the world is myself. So one has to be careful. That's why you have to have a Vedanta Vichara properly. What I am rejecting is the names and forms are rejected, but the substantive, because the world exists. Because from existence alone the whole world came. So by existence itself is sustained because it exists. If there is no existence, it cannot say it exists. World cannot exist. So existence lends support for existence of the whole world. So whole world is, this is different, that is different, but everything is means it exists. That easiness which cannot be perceived is the very substantive, and that itself is I am, has to be learned from Mahavakya Vichara. So it's not just who am I inquiry. Who am I inquiry gives me Tvam padartha vichara. Who am I is only one part of the equation tattvamasi. You are that. So what is you is being inquired by rejecting everything. That's not complete science, and that will not give the result, because I have to also claim that also I am, because that's the whole tattvamasi, means you are that which I rejected before. So what is that? That which has to be taken while rejecting still the nama rupa, the very substantive of the universe, which is the existence that I am, has to be known. So that's essentially sarvagraha upasyanso swayameva avasishyate. I remain as the very substantive of the whole universe too, and that should be recognized. We'll do 25. Natatra mana pekshasti, natatra mana pekshasti, स्वप्रकाश स्वरूपतः स्वप्रकाश स्वरूपतः त्रादृग्व्युत्पत्त्यपेक्षा चेत् तादृग्व्युत्पत्त्यपेक्षा चेत् श्रुतं पठ गुरोर्मुखात् त्रादृग्व्युत्पत्त्यपेक्षा चेत् श्रुतिं पठ गुरोर्मुखात्. So natatra mana together. Natatra mana pekshasti स्वप्रकाश स्वरूपतः त्रादुग्व्युत्पत्त्य पेक्षा चेत् श्रुतिं पठ गुरोर्मुखात्. Tatra, in that knowing, Atma mana apeksha. Atma, the self is mana apeksha. It cannot be known through any, mana means pramana. So through any means of knowledge is pramata, prameya. There are three aspects. I am a knower, this is a known, and this is a pramana, means of knowledge. To see things, I have to see. Eyesight is a pramana, means of knowledge. To hear things, I have to use my sense of hearing. To taste, I have to use my sense of taste. So this becomes a means of knowledge of particular field. For Vedanta, what is a pramana? It says Vedanta is a pramana, or to know Atma is a Vedanta is a pramana. It doesn't directly reveal it. It points by lakshartha in the direction for you. You have to inquire. You have to discover. And that's what is here being pointed out. Because natatra mana means directly no pramana can reveal it, because it's aprameyam, it's not an object for knowledge. Swaprakasha swarupavatu, because it is swaprakasham, it is shining itself. I don't need to do anything, I have to only remove the obstacles. It is self-shining, and therefore swaprakasham. And tadruk yutpatyapeksha chet, and so tadruk of the type vyutpatti apeksha chet. If you need a validation of this, in order to understand this clearly, how one can know still cannot be known, that which cannot be known can be known through a means, is essentially for that shrutim pada gurur mukha. For that only you have to go to a teacher and learn shruti, guru pada mukho, through the mouth of the teacher. That means you have to listen to the teacher, and that's called shrotavyaha, mantavyaha, nidhyasitavya. There are no shortcuts here, because it's not something you can logically deduce, you cannot something really you can look, and you cannot something, no pramana can operate. But at the same time you have to go to a teacher, where teacher teaches you to take the mind beyond the pramanas by properly manipulating the words. And that's why here the emphasis here, as he concluding the chapter, says Shrutim pada gurur mukha. You have to go to teacher. Tad vijnanartam sa gurum eva abhigachet. To learn that, you have to go to a teacher. That's what the Upanishad says. Krishna says, Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. So you go to a teacher, and with a humility, pranipata means like a flat, like a falling on his feet, and pariprasna, asking appropriate questions. appropriate questions. Go to a teacher, don't ask about chemistry problems or physics problems. If you go to a chemistry teacher and ask physics problem, he will not be able to tell. Same way, Adhyatmika teacher can only tell you about Adhyatma, not about physics or chemistry. So you go to appropriate teacher. That's what it says. We'll do last sloka now. Yadi sarvagrahatyagaha Yadi sarvagrahatyagaha Asakyastarhi dhiyam raja Asaktastarhi dhiyam raja Saranam tadadhinaha Saranam tadadhinaha Antarbahir vaishonubhuyatam Antarbahir vaishonubhuyatam. Together. Yadi sarvagrahatyagaha Asakyastarhi dhiyam raja Saranam tadadhinaha Antarbahir vaishonubhuyatam. Yadi, if sarvagrahatyagaha, by rejecting everything that I know, because everything that I know is only an object of name and forms only, that is attributive content of the object. So everything I know, sarvagrahatyagaha, rejecting by all concepts of everything. So God is not a concept, God is not, Atma is not a concept, because I am is the very essence of life itself. Sarvagrahatyagam, avasyaha, if you think it is impossible, asakyaha, it is impossible, tarhi then, dhyam, to that intellect, saranam raja, take refuge in the teacher or in the guru. So that's why Saranagati becomes emphasized, and that's what is Saranagati means. The mind has to be surrendered, the ego has to be surrendered, and that is real Saranagati. And Saranam Raja, Tatra Adhinaha, and depend upon the intellect, Antar Bahirva Eshaha the Sakshi Anubhuyatam. So as the mind understands it, then it's not something that objectifiable, but it is revealed in every knowledge also. So that knowledge, how I can shift my attention from the to the knower, from the known, by using a viveka, discriminative intellect. I had to develop that knack by properly listening to the scriptures for a prolonged length of time under a competent teacher, and then reflect on it so that I have a crystal clear knowledge, and then contemplate on it. So, Srotavyaha, Mantavyaha, Nididhyasitavyaha. There is no shortcuts here other than what the scripture recommends, and that's why Vedanta becomes a pramana here. This we end with chapter 10, which is a natakam. Natakam means the sakshi is like a deepam. It illumines the absence of the thoughts as well as the presence of the thought. But to know the absence or presence, somebody has to be there. So the knower has to be there to know that it is. So it is mind only has to know that I am not the mind, but I am that because of which even the mind is known. That's what has to be understood. And with this we stop this 10th chapter, and from tomorrow on we'll take general topics which are not there in the Panchadashi. Panchadashi will resume later once we have time again after 11th chapter on. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.